Welcome to my preview for Game Week 22, a quick turnaround, and thank God, because I have to say, this is just one of those weeks where despite the score maybe not being one of the worst I've ever got, very frustrating, and I'll be explaining why shortly. I'll be analysing the mistakes I made, and obviously some things that are obviously outside your control, but the reasons why my decisions obviously impacted on my score. I could have been looking at 60 plus points, and instead I'm looking at pretty much 41 because I've got 45 overall with the bonus points coming in for Salah, and I did take a -4, so yeah, I am on 41 points, and I'll be talking about exactly what went right and what went wrong. And as you can see at the bottom of your screen here, Calvert-Lewin captain, I got him in for a -4. I looked at those fixtures, I looked at how poor Newcastle were. I was looking at Calvert-Lewin's record against Newcastle, where he pretty much scored in every single game he's played against them, even in the defeat that they had before. And to be honest, that did escape my mind, the fact that Newcastle already had beaten Everton. Maybe I would have reconsidered that. Maybe not so much bringing him in, but captaining him. But to be honest, the other captaincy choice that I was thinking of is Gundogan, who's my vice-captain. He blanked as well. He was the nearly man in that game against Sheffield United. But the reason why the Calvert-Lewin decision hurt so much is because that ended up meaning that I got rid of Kane for a -4, and obviously he didn't play. Spurs just lost at the time of this recording, but I had Bamford on my bench. Now this is the problem. I've got Bamford first on my bench, but because I have pretty much, 3 players missing, and they're all from my defence, and all of my midfielders and attackers play, that means Bamford doesn't come on, which is a big, big blow. And obviously if you take that -4 that I did from Kane to Calvert-Lewin, then yeah, I would have had Bamford's points instead, and we'd be looking at 19 more points easily, and I probably would have captained Gundogan, extra point for the captaincy. So I literally missed out on 20 points from one key decision, and obviously that cost me. And kind of one indication of how this week was going to go was pretty much at the exact same time when the lineups came out. I think it was at 2 o'clock on the Saturday. Manchester City against Sheffield, both Stones and Cancelo benched, and the reasoning I had about having both of them is that you would think if one of them's benched, you would expect the other one to still start. But both of them got benched, and it just shows that apart from Diaz, really, and Kevin De Bruyne when he's fit, no one can escape Pep Roulette. And in a way, it was a good thing because it was a bit of a wake-up call. The problem was that it just so happened to be in a week where, if you look at my bench, I was depleted. I literally only have Soufal coming on from my bench with 1 point. Obviously, I wish it was the Bamford points, but it isn't. And the other defender I have is Walker-Peters, who's injured. But I wanted to be aggressive. I wanted to make moves like Calvert-Lewin and Gundogan, 2 good captaincy choices for the week. But in the end, sometimes just sticking to what you have and maybe just focusing on your weaknesses, which is what I tend to do. But I didn't do that. I didn't follow through with what I normally do, and that has cost me ultimately very dearly. I could have been looking at a very good score this week, especially considering the average is very low. But instead, very, very poor week. I think it's just below the average. And then, Mitchell, yet another obviously really frustrating one, because if you think about it, all of my back line, all their teams kept clean sheets. So obviously I'd be looking at 18 more points there, but all of them benched. Mitchell didn't feature in the 1-0 win against Wolves, and it's a big shame, to be honest. And the reason I played him over Soufal is because I actually thought Palace had a good chance of keeping a clean sheet, so I was right about that. But Mitchell got dropped, so it literally meant nothing for me. But on a more positive note, Martinez, 10 points, what a hero. One guy I can rely on all season. He had a bit of a shaky start when I first brought him in my team around game week 5 or 6 when I played my wild card. But ever since, he has been a mainstay. And to be honest, even from game week 1, I wanted him. But because he didn't play in game week 1, I ended up going with McCarthy, I believe, who still did well for me. But yeah, Martinez has been a gem, and him and Pope, the best goalkeepers this season. I know a lot of people obviously are attracted by the likes of Mendy now and Ederson, who obviously play in very good defences. But Martinez and Pope, they give you save points, they give you bonus points, and plenty of clean sheets along the way. So very happy with Martinez, someone who's been very consistent for me. And even when, those odd disappointments here and there, he more than makes up for it with these 10 pointers at times. Gundogan, as I discussed already, very disappointing. And Son, very interesting, because obviously Spurs just played without Kane for the first time. I was watching a bit of the game, and I have to say Brighton looked comfortable for most of the time. Spurs didn't really offer any threat. They kind of woke up in the second half when they made changes like Vinicius coming on, but it's just not the same not having Kane. And in years gone by, there was this debate about, are Spurs a better team when Kane doesn't play? And the likes of Moura can play on the counter-attack, Son as well, and they'd have maybe a backup striker like Llorente and Dele Alli. They still had options. They were a bit more dynamic, but now I just think Mourinho's created a structure where Spurs are completely dependent on Son and Kane. And the other day, I actually read a statistic that were talking about duos that contribute to the highest percentage of goals of any Premier League side. And this actually stemmed before the Premier League was even formed, back to the 80s and stuff. And Son and Kane, literally, I think they're third or fourth on the list. They contribute to 70% of Spurs' goals this season. And to be honest, I'm surprised it's not even higher, but it just shows how dependent they are on the quality of Son, his finishing, the movement, his speed, and Kane, his ability to get into those pockets and to drop deep at times, and if not, be a fox in the box and finish those chances, because without just one of them, it impacts them so much. Now, obviously, it's a small sample size. We'll have to wait and see what happens in the next few games, but I actually have a funny feeling that Kane will be back for the Chelsea game, and that might sound a bit optimistic or pessimistic, whatever way you look at it. I am an Arsenal fan after all, but I have a feeling that Mourinho's kind of done this before, and Kane, he definitely has some pain or something, no doubt about it. But I think he's saving him for that Chelsea game. Tuchel might prepare for a game without Kane, and then Kane is in the starting lineup. And if not, I do believe by game weeks 23 or 24 he'll be there. And it has been kind of announced that the injury isn't as bad as they first anticipated, but we'll have to wait and see. That's obviously all speculation and just my opinion. But if Kane is back in, obviously I would love to have him back for that West Brom game, because apart from the City game after that, and despite how poor Spurs can be, because obviously in the last 8 games I think they've got 2 wins or something like that, I still think Son and Kane are great FPL assets, and having one of them still a viable option. But some people considering to bench Son for Game Week 22 with that Chelsea fixture, especially if they believe Kane won't feature. So very interesting there. Bruno, yet another blank. Obviously did get that assist against Fulham, but that was a fantasy assist. He hasn't got any goal or official assist in a very long time, since Game Week 17, and that was a penalty against Villa, which was controversial. But yeah, Bruno Fernandes still someone that I'm not really considering to get rid of, and as we'll talk about with a certain other player very soon, patience in these big hitters and in the greatest FPL assets you can own can pay off. And speaking of one of the good decisions I made this week, rather than jumping the gun and going from Salah to Mane, making a sideways move, I just stuck with Salah. I had other more aggressive moves to make, which obviously cost me, but Salah, this is what he can do. And to be honest, the fact that Mane wasn't in the lineup, it filled me with confidence in terms of a Salah haul, because if you've seen his record when Mane isn't in the side, is phenomenal. And I think the last time that Mane didn't feature and Salah started was against Villa, and even though they lost 7-2, Salah scored twice, and it just shows he's just so clinical, and today he looks so sharp. And this is something I said even against Tottenham when he scored and it got disallowed. I still thought he was decent. He maybe gave the ball away a bit too much, was a bit selfish, a bit desperate to score. But with Salah, you get what you want in an FPL asset, that desire to score goals. He's the top scorer this season now with 15 goals, and he is hungry for another Golden Boot. I think he will win it, and this is why I said from the Palace game. Obviously, since then, he's had a bit of a drought, but obviously 2 goals in the FA Cup against United, despite the loss. Got the goal against Spurs, got disallowed, and now finally has broken the drought. Very happy with him. Another guy I'm happy with is Grealish, and it's always interesting to kind of look back towards the beginning of the season, because another thing that escaped my mind was that Grealish had a 15-point haul against Southampton, despite obviously losing the game. They were 3-0 down until he got a goal and an assist, I believe. But Grealish, fantastic player at his price. I know there's Harvey Barnes, who's looking very good. There's Zaha. But for me, Grealish is always the guy that I want, and he's got games in hand. Obviously, the yellow card is still kind of waving around, and I hate having to mention that all the time, but it is something to consider. And then looking at my strikers, Calvert-Lewin captaincy, obviously a fail, but then again, I probably would have captained Gundogan. But in hindsight, really, if you look across this season, this is something I've been analysing. In terms of players I have, the teams that kind of, it's hard to explain, but basically, Newcastle and Sheffield aren't particularly, teams you want to captain against. They have decent defensive statistics, although obviously Newcastle recently, they had really poor ones. They had the second worst expected goals conceded, and it just shows stats aren't everything. They can give you, one part of the story, but then there's the eye test, and then there's obviously the changing form. Newcastle was so good, and Everton was so flat. And it's just such a shame that obviously the performance came as soon as I captained Lewin, but to be honest, it's still a bad decision ultimately. And what I realise, and it's the same thing with my triple captaincy, I think it's best to kind of just stick to players that are more consistent, that you can trust. And I know Salah's blanked 6 times in a row, but he's still someone I would consider, a reliable and safe pick. And then there's Bruno, Son, Kane. To be honest, those four are probably my favourite captaincy options this year. And, they're four of the best high-scoring players this season. So, yeah, to be honest, I'm going to try to stick to them as much as possible. Even De Bruyne has been a bit disappointing as a captain option. Cancelo can be a very good one, but then you saw him getting benched randomly. That was my fear against West Brom. It could have happened. Instead, it happened against Sheffield. But yeah, it's a bit of a wake-up call this week with the double City being dropped, with Mitchell being dropped. It shows I need to improve my defensive squad depth, and I also need to stop captaining Calvert-Lewin and Grealish because, the last time I captained Grealish, Calvert-Lewin was the one who hauled, and now that I captain Calvert-Lewin, Grealish is the one who does decent. So it just shows that probably going for more of the big hitters is the better option. Antonio had a good chance against Liverpool. Didn't score it. Salah had a similar chance, but he buried it. Difference in quality, we all know that. But Antonio's still a good striker. But I've got a benching, or should I say a team selection headache now. And obviously, as you can see here, it cost me dearly. Bamford's got 15 points on my bench with the bonus points coming in, which is such a big shame. And looking forward to the next week, I don't know who to bench, honestly. I know who my captain's going to be. I'm most certain it's going to be Salah. Bruno's going to be my vice. I'm pretty confident with that. Hopefully, he does start because you never know with Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. Sometimes he likes to rotate, which is fair enough, to be honest. But with the recent results for United, with how integral Bruno is and how hungry I think he'll be to get back on the score sheet and to get those assists, I think he will start. He'll be my vice-captain. Salah's going to be my captain. So kind of just got that, not really going to overthink that. But the problem I have with the structure I have is the fact that I have 8 attackers basically. So I don't know who to bench between Gundogan, Bamford, Calvert-Lewin, Antonio, or Son even. He's another one that I could. Salah, Bruno, and even Grealish with his fixture, I'm not really thinking of benching them. Unfortunately, I can't play 2 defenders and then obviously just play Gundogan as well. So yeah, I've got a bit of a benching headache to do, and hopefully I get it right, unlike last week. But on a wild card or with transfers, one thing I would like to rectify is either, just have 4 midfielders, and get Kane back in for Calvert-Lewin, something like that. Or, just revamp the whole structure. I've been stagnating for around a month now. I've been, going from 60k to 90k to 80k to 70k, then back down to 100k. And right now it's looking like I'm going to be around 150k or something. And it's very poor. But we all have these ups and downs. It's good to learn from them. And it's a bit of a wake-up call for me, as I already discussed. With the City assets, it just shows that pretty much Diaz is the only one you can trust to start every single game. And on a wild card, I would change things. I'm pretty much considering the likes of Rudiger from Chelsea defence. Not so sure about Chilwell, he's being rotated. Most of the wing-backs are. Azpilicueta and Thiago Silva, they look a bit nailed. But Rudiger for his price, very tempting. On the wild card, also Cresswell instead of Soufal. He's on set pieces, got another assist. He salvaged that, out of nowhere. And Cresswell's just so consistent this season. Despite how good Soufal is and, how great value he offers, Cresswell is still probably the better option, as has been proven in the last few weeks. And then Diaz maybe, for the security of starts, Cancelo and Stones can be benched, and then sometimes those 6-8 points you get from Diaz is exactly what you need. And unfortunately, I didn't have that this week. So I'd change a lot of my defence. I'd probably keep Martinez, he's been one of the shining lights of my season. And the midfield, to be fair, I'd probably keep it the exact same. Maybe, obviously, Gundogan I get rid of, and I get Kane in for Calvert-Lewin. But ultimately, my wildcard, it will either facilitate Game Week 26 for the bench boost, or it will be used afterwards and pretty much set my team up for the rest of the season. So it's going to be one of those things I'm going to be using my wildcard for, and hopefully it brings me a lot of points. I'm going to need it. But right now, obviously, what I see, the weakness, apart from the team selection headache, which I seem to get wrong most of the time, is, getting rid of Walker-Peters or Mitchell, for players who are going to play, just in case Stones, Cancelo get, injured or, they're rotated or whatever. I need to have good squad depth. And although it's going to pose more selection headaches in the future, I'd rather have points on my bench than obviously, no points at all. So Walker-Peters is probably going to come out. And to be honest, I've got all the money in the world to spend on the defender. Same with if I get rid of Mitchell. But I'm thinking of getting Robertson or Trent. And that might not seem very popular. A lot of people are getting rid of those players. But their record against Brighton is exceptional. If you look at Trent Alexander-Arnold, he's got 3 assists in 6 games against Brighton. And because I'm going to use the wildcard soon, probably, obviously I could change that, it kind of allows me to make more short-term moves, which is a good thing because this season, I think one of the kind of problems I've, created for myself is thinking too far ahead and then not thinking about the short term. Then I lose points for the next 2-3 weeks. And maybe sometimes you can maximize points for those weeks as well as future weeks. And that's something I maybe haven't done well enough this season. But Trent or Robertson, I know they've got City in Game Week 23, but the plan would be one of those Liverpool fullbacks coming in, and probably Rudiger coming in Game Week 23 when he's got Sheffield away, and then the following week he's got Newcastle at home. He will be coming in for Mitchell, and in that case I'd have very good squad depth. And City, they face Liverpool and Spurs back to back, so I can maybe, drop one of the City defenders and stuff like that. I could drop Robertson when he's got Man City, and I've got good squad depth there. I've got Soufal, and I'd have the other two that I mentioned that I would be bringing in. So that's my transfer plans at the moment. It's really focusing on defence, and to be honest, it's not ideal. The ideal thing would obviously be having a stable defence and mainly having aggressive transfers in midfield and attack that obviously pay off, unlike mine did. One positive I will say about Bamford is that I still have him. And he's someone that I have said, maybe try keep him. He is still one of the best assets, for his price and up front. But it's just so hard to predict, when Leeds are going to turn up and when Leicester are going to turn up. Leicester, a very inconsistent team. But it just shows how important Vardy is. And Castagne's injury didn't help matters at all. But Bamford, very frustrating. That obviously I put a lot of faith in him in the Newcastle game. Didn't pay off. And he got 1 point for me. And then when I bench him, he gets a 15-point haul, but it is what it is. You can't, beat yourself too much about it. But I have to say, obviously Gundogan on the bench, that looks really wrong, doesn't it? And he's someone I'd probably bench against Liverpool and Spurs. So what I might do is actually bench Antonio instead against Aston Villa away. But then again, it could be Calvert-Lewin, it could be Bamford, it could be Son. One of those is going to be on my bench. I don't know who. I already said with Kane, I do think he's going to be back for that Chelsea game. And Son can still get maybe a goal or something, maybe 9 points, depending on bonus. I think Chelsea's going to be really tough. I could see a 0-0 there, to be fair, the way it's going, but very difficult to predict right now. Mourinho's going to be desperate for a result, having seen how they've been in the last few weeks. But plenty of problems here. Pretty happy with my captaincy choice going into this week. Hopefully it pays off, because I've actually analysed it. Out of the 21 game weeks so far, I've got a good captain, so at least the captaincy return in 11, which isn't really good enough. You'd be hoping for at least 15 or more. And in terms of my highest scoring player being captained, I think I've only done that 3 times this season or something, which isn't good enough at all. And that could really push you up if you get it right. So really going forward, I want to improve my defensive squad depth. I want to improve my captaincy decisions. And to be honest, I want to get rid of this 8 attacker headache, because one thing that I normally do is have pretty much a set 11 and have decent options on the bench, and I'll maybe rotate defenders, and I normally get it right. I'm not really used to having points on my bench, and obviously it's one of the most frustrating things you can have as an FPL manager, but sometimes the cookie doesn't crumble your way, but we'll have to wait and see what happens. Very happy with the team going forward, hopefully no rotation and stuff like that, and I'll be letting you guys know who I bring in for Walker Peters. I'm fairly certain I'm going to bring in a defender. If Rudiger had a better fixture, I'd probably be getting him in. But then again, with Tuchel, one thing I have to say for you lot, and I already discussed it with Chilwell earlier, expect rotation with Tuchel. Even Rudiger's not safe. Until he finds an 11 or a base or a foundation that he's going to be happy with, he's going to keep chopping and changing depending on the fixtures. And when it's the Christmas period and stuff, when there's games every few days like now, just expect your players to be rotated from time to time. But obviously the good thing with bringing in Robertson or Trent and Rudiger and having these 3 defenders, you would expect to have at least 3 defenders fielded out. And then obviously comes the selection headache with my midfielders and attackers. But thank you for watching this video, and hopefully your Game Week 21 has been much better than mine, and hopefully Game Week 22 is much better. I will be doing a live stream on the Tuesday, 1 hour before the deadline, so it'll be at 3:30. It will start UK time or GMT, and I hope to see you then. And if you enjoyed this video, smash the like button and subscribe if you're new around here. And all the best of luck with your captaincy choices, also with who you put on your bench, with your transfers. Very important to get those things right. Recently I haven't been doing that, and I'm looking to obviously put an end to the stagnation I've been experiencing over the past month or so in Game Week 22 and going forwards. I've still got most of my chips in play apart from the free hit, so I am in a good position, but obviously not as good as I was maybe a few weeks ago. But these kind of weeks are very, very important in terms of learning from and improving, And at the end of the day, it's just a game, you know. Don't beat yourself up about it. Although I will admit, I almost did because of some of my decisions recently. But yeah, definitely don't do that, and just enjoy the game. That's the most important thing. But thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you next time.